Okay, so I want to speak a bit about Britain's former Prime Minister Margaret Thatcher. This is not going to be reflection on her premiership necessarily, but specifically about the event of her death. I was listening to music from the 80s, and I'm the sort of person who tends to go on to other things. So, music from the 80s, politics of the 80s, start thinking about Thatcher. And I came across the videos of the street parties when she died. And it's this particular aspect that I want to talk about. Now, I made a video about this at the time. I was in China at that time teaching, and one of my students actually informed me that she died April 2013. It's now January 2016, so we're talking almost 3 years ago now. Um, that was quite a big thing at the time, of course, because this is a very famous and very controversial figure. My mum also sent me an email to tell me about it, but she knew that I wanted to keep abreast of what was going on in the world. Anyway, after Thatcher died, as they had promised, a lot of left wing people, to put it one way, decided to organise street parties. And these street parties literally took that format, almost like Jubilee parties. They were open air events. There was champagne. There was, don't know if there was much in the way of games or anything, but it was basically groups of people getting together to celebrate the death of Margaret Thatcher. Now, at the time, I felt uneasy about this, and I still do. And looking at the video again just reminded me of the fact that I feel uneasy about it. Now, before I continue to explain why, and why I feel those street parties were inappropriate, I want to make something very clear. I always say this in videos that are contentious, so I'm not misunderstood. I am not a huge fan of Margaret Thatcher. In fact, that's understating it. I hate Toryism in many ways. Um, and I was not crying when she passed. Okay, so this is not a case of me being an apologist for Margaret Thatcher. I want to make that very clear. The problem is, because Thatcher was such a controversial figure, I think those, especially on the left, kind of take this idea that you have to hate her to prove that you're not a Tory bastard. And that sort of narrow thinking is something I've little time for. It's a sort of narrow mentality of the Scottish nationalists, i.e., unless you vote yes, you don't love Scotland. This sort of narrow thinking, and a very little time for it. As a centrist, I admittedly am not as left wing as the people who were gathering to celebrate her death, but nor am I a right winger either, nor am I a Tory supporter, not at all. But this is why I believe it's inappropriate. Several reasons. First of all, taking away all the emotions of it, she was an old woman. She was 87 years old, so this was not something that just happened out of the blue. It was inevitable. She was in poor health. She was 87 years old. Secondly, and this is very important, what actually changed? She wasn't prime minister when she died. You know, she'd already done all the damage. If you're from a left wing point of view, she'd already done all the damage she could. You know, she wasn't prime minister, so there was nothing else that she could do. I think it was Owen Jones pointed out that he wouldn't attend these celebrations because Thatcherism is not dead. I think it was also Jones who said that he was dreading her death. It may have been another left wing writer. He was dreading her death precisely because it would lead to gushing sycophantic sort of reflections from Tory supporters and from right wingers. To be clear, I'm just as critical of those who sort of blindly adulate her without considering the very real damage that she did do. Um, but I have to say, I find those street parties pretty distasteful. In the end of the day, you have to consider if a left wing figure passed away. In fact, we have had that recently. Tony Benn was, I think it's fair to say, a very respected figure of the British left, widely respected among socialists and so on. Now, when he passed away, he was 88, died in 2014. You didn't see groups of Tory supporters go to the streets and say, oh, thank God the commie is dead. You know? And for right wingers, someone like Tony Benn is just as controversial to them as Thatcher was to the left. Now, okay, there's a difference because never became Prime Minister, but there are figures on the left that are just as controversial to right wingers as Thatcher was to left wingers. So, my argument would be there is a different response from the left. I'm saying this as a centrist. It's noticeable. Right wingers don't go out and celebrate when left wing figures die, not in the same way. Another issue I had was our reputation abroad. Now, believe me, I do not want a situation like North Korea where people are extravagantly wailing in the streets. Of course, I don't want that. But I think it gives us a negative reputation that people around the world look at Britain and think, well, wait a second, these people are cheering the death of a former leader? I mean, whatever you think of Margaret Thatcher, she won 3 general elections. She served this country for 11 years. You can argue she done massive damage. I would argue that she did. But she was British Prime Minister. And I think adulating her death done us no favours in terms of how it looks. Looking at some of the people in the video, actually, I'm going to post a video of one of the street parties. Frankly, it was pretty ugly, the way they were coming across. I'm not talking about the arguments. They made valid points. But one person even got their child to say how they hated Margaret Thatcher. Now, that's just plain wrong. Getting a child to echo the politics of the parent. I'm not talking about an 8-year-old or a 9-year-old. I'm talking about a toddler. I think that's plain wrong. Brainwashing children into sharing the ideology of their parents. One guy said he was only 2 when the Falklands happened, but he still thought the war was preventable. Don't know how. But anyway, you see, the issue here is not about the rights and wrongs of their arguments. I think they made many strong points. Yes, she did cause enormous damage, especially in the northeast where I live. She caused massive damage in mining communities. She done some terrible things, domestically speaking. But right wingers would say exactly the same about Labour governments. So there is a different response here, and I just think it's ugly. However controversial someone is, celebrating their death, celebrating the passing of another human being, whilst their family has to lay them to rest. I think it's frankly disgusting. Now, I'm not calling for these people to have cried crocodile tears or to even have any sense of remorse from her death, not at all. You know, there's people, when they die, when Rupert Murdoch dies, I'm not going to cry crocodile tears, and I'm going to say good riddance. But I'm not going to go out and have a street party for it, because it won't change anything. The sun continues. I think these people fail to comprehend how they come across. And if you look at the video and you're a reasonable person, hopefully you'll see what I'm driving at here. Now, to be clear, I'm not saying that they should cry crocodile tears. And, you know, I fully support their right to hate her legacy and so on. But I think going to the extent of having street parties, apart from being pointless, because it doesn't change anything, is crass. Was crass, I should say. If you are a socialist, incidentally, not every socialist agreed with it. There were left wingers who said that they didn't approve of that. If you are left wing or a socialist or whatever, and you want to come onto this video and call me a Tory bastard or whatever, check out my record on videos regarding Tories' welfare policies. Check out my record and views on that party. I hate Toryism, actually. I do believe it's destructive. And my message to Tories is, before you blindly adulate her, you have to take on board where these people are coming from. But the way they done that, I think, was very ugly and very crass. That doesn't change a damn thing.